My name is Luciana Brooks. I'm 32 years old, and 2 weeks ago, I learned that sometimes the moment a relationship ends doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It comes quietly, in a hospital room, when the person you love chooses not to show up. Daniel Carter and I had been together for 2 years. We lived together, split bills, built routines that looked stable from the outside. The kind of relationship people call solid because it doesn't make noise. I work in tech sales, and last month, everything in my career finally clicked into place. After more than a year of pushing, missing weekends, chasing targets that never seemed to stop moving, I got promoted to senior account manager. A 40% raise. Real momentum. The kind of step that changes how you see your future. The day it happened felt like sunlight breaking through something heavy. Around 3 p.m., my boss called me into his office. He had that calm smile managers wear when they know they're about to change your life in a good way. When he said it, "It's official, Luciana. You got it." I felt like I was floating out of the room. The first thing I did was text Daniel. Baby, I got it. Promotion's official. Dinner tonight? Your favorite steakhouse?" I stared at my phone, already picturing the way he'd smile, the way he'd wrap his arm around me like this was our win, not just mine. His reply came quickly. "That's great, babe, but I can't tonight. It's Jessica's birthday party. You knew about this." Jessica, his ex. Someone he still saw occasionally in shared friend circles. He'd mentioned the party in passing earlier that week, but it didn't stick. Not because I didn't care, because I assumed that if something big happened, something that mattered, he'd choose me. So I tried again, gently. "I know, but this is kind of huge for me. Could you maybe come late? Dinner first, then the party?" There was a pause before his response, long enough for doubt to creep in. Then, "Don't be selfish, Luciana. Friends only have one birthday a year. Your promotion isn't going anywhere." Selfish. The word landed heavier than it should have. Not because of what it meant, but how easily he used it. Like my excitement, my moment, was something inconvenient he needed to manage. That should have been the moment I paid attention. But I didn't. I told him it was fine, that I'd celebrate with coworkers instead. I even added a smiley face to the message, like I needed to convince both of us it didn't bother me. By 9 p.m., I was at Murphy's Pub across from the office with my team. It was simple. A few drinks, some jokes, people clapping me on the back, telling me I deserved it. The kind of night that's supposed to end with you going home feeling seen. When I left, I was texting my friend David, trying to figure out if we should meet up somewhere else. I stepped into the crosswalk, and then everything disappeared. I didn't see the car. Later, they told me it was a Honda Civic that ran a red light. 1 second, I was walking. The next, I was on the pavement and my body didn't feel like mine anymore. I remember the sound before I remember the pain. People shouting, tires screeching, someone yelling for an ambulance. Then the pain came all at once. My left leg felt wrong. Not just hurt, wrong. Like it wasn't attached the way it should be. My ribs burned every time I tried to breathe. There was blood in my mouth, on my face, everywhere. The paramedics arrived fast, hands on me, voices calm but urgent. They lifted me onto a stretcher and everything blurred into motion. The adrenaline held for a while, just enough to keep me from breaking apart completely. But in the ambulance, as the city lights passed overhead, the pain caught up. At the hospital, it became numbers and scans and quiet voices explaining things I barely processed. Fractured tibia, 3 broken ribs. They said it could have been worse. That didn't make it feel better. They told me I'd need surgery in the morning. Overnight monitoring. No food. No water after midnight. And suddenly, none of the things that mattered a few hours ago, my promotion, the celebration, the future I'd been building, felt real anymore. There was only one thing I wanted. Daniel. I wanted his voice. I wanted him to walk into that room and make everything feel less terrifying for just 5 minutes. So around 11 p.m., I called him. He picked up almost immediately. Music blasted through the phone, laughter layered over it. "Hey, what's up? I'm at Jessica's party." I tried to steady my voice, but it came out thinner than I expected. "Daniel, I got hit by a car. I'm in the hospital. Can you come?" Silence. Not long, but long enough for me to hear everything behind him more clearly than him. Then, "What? Are you serious? How bad is it?" "Pretty bad," I said. "Broken leg, broken ribs. I need surgery tomorrow." Another pause. Laughter in the background, someone shouting over music. Then he said it. "Well, can it wait till tomorrow morning? I'm kind of in the middle of Jessica's thing. Everyone's here. It would be weird to leave now." I stared at the ceiling as he spoke, like if I didn't move, this moment wouldn't become real. Daniel, I said slowly, carefully, like maybe clarity would fix it. I got hit by a car. I'm asking you to come to the hospital. He sighed. Not worried, not scared, annoyed. You sound fine enough to call me. Just sleep it off or call your mom, okay? We're doing karaoke and I already paid for bottle service. I'll come in the morning. And then the line went dead. I didn't even realize I was still holding my breath until it hurt. Everything hurt, but not in the way I expected. Because in that moment, lying in a hospital bed with broken bones and a body that didn't feel like mine, the worst pain wasn't physical. It was understanding something I hadn't let myself see before. The person I loved heard the word hospital and chose a party. I didn't cry after he hung up. That's the part that still unsettles me when I think back on it. You'd expect tears, panic, something loud enough to match the moment. But instead, there was just this quiet, almost hollow stillness, like something inside me had gone offline to protect itself. A nurse came in a few minutes later, adjusting the IV, checking my vitals. She spoke gently, the way people do when they can see you're holding yourself together by something invisible. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" she asked. And that question, simple, practical, hit harder than anything Daniel had said, because it made me realize I didn't have the person I thought I had. So I called my mother. She lives 3 states away, and the moment she answered, I felt something crack open in my chest. I didn't even have to explain much. The tremble in my voice did it for me. "I'm coming," she said immediately. Then I called David. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate, just, "I'm on my way." He showed up in less than an hour. I remember the way he walked into that room, slightly out of breath, eyes scanning everything like he was trying to assess damage he couldn't fix. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down like he wasn't going anywhere. And then he stayed. While I lay there with a fractured leg and ribs that made every breath feel like glass, David adjusted my blanket, talked to the nurses, made sure I had water when I was allowed to, and filled the silence with stupid jokes just to keep me from drifting into that dark place where everything feels too heavy. Daniel did none of that. Around midnight, I made the mistake of checking my phone again. And that's when I saw it. An Instagram story. Daniel smiling wide, drink in hand, surrounded by lights and people, and everything that had felt so far away from that hospital room. The caption read, "Best night ever, priorities, friends forever, priorities." He posted that while I was lying there waiting for surgery. I stared at the screen for a long time, long enough for the words to stop looking like words and start feeling like something else, something colder, sharper. And here's what made it worse. Several of my coworkers had seen the accident happen. It was right outside our office building. Ambulance lights, police, the whole scene. By the next morning, people at work knew. They were sending messages, flowers, checking in, telling me they were glad I was alive. And then they saw his story. So now it wasn't just something I felt. It was something everyone could see. The next morning, they wheeled me into surgery. David stayed the entire time. Sat in that uncomfortable waiting room for hours, texting my mom updates, making sure someone was there when I woke up. Daniel didn't show up. He didn't call. He didn't text. Nothing. Not until the next afternoon. "Hey, hope surgery went okay. Jessica's party was wild, LOL. When are you coming home?" I read that message 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, because I was trying to understand how someone could write something like that and not feel anything. That was the moment something shifted. Not anger, not even sadness. Clarity. Because suddenly, it wasn't about that night anymore. That night just forced me to see something that had been there all along. I started thinking about other moments. Smaller ones. Easier to ignore. When I graduated with my MBA 2 years ago, Daniel skipped my celebration dinner because his friends had planned a weekend trip. When my grandfather died last year, he came to the funeral and left early because someone he hadn't seen in months was in town. When I had one of the biggest presentations of my career, he forgot entirely because he was out with friends. At the time, I explained it away. He didn't mean it. He's just busy. It's not that serious. But lying there in that hospital bed, with machines quietly beeping around me, I started to see the pattern. There was always someone else. Always another plan. Always a reason he couldn't fully show up. And then I thought about the opposite. The times I showed up for him. I drove 4 hours to pick him up when his car broke down. I canceled a family gathering to stay with him through a rough patch with his job. I left a work conference early when he had a panic attack. I didn't even think about it when I did those things. Because to me, that's what you do when you love someone. You show up. By day 3 after surgery, I was still in the hospital, staring at the ceiling more often than I should have been. asking myself one question over and over again. If someone can't show up when you're in an emergency room, when exactly will they? Daniel visited once, about 20 minutes. He spent most of it on his phone, scrolling, occasionally glancing up like he was checking off a task. He complained about the parking fees, kissed my forehead like it was something he had to do. "I'll check in later," he said as he left. He didn't, and I wish I could say that was the moment I ended it, that everything became clear and I just walked away. But the truth is, I didn't, because part of me still wanted to believe I was overreacting, that this was fixable, that maybe I just needed to explain it better, say it the right way, give him another chance to understand. When I was discharged, that hope didn't last long. Daniel picked me up, but the entire car ride home was filled with complaints about leaving work early, about traffic, about how expensive everything had been lately. Not once did he ask how I felt. Not once did he ask if I needed anything. At home, reality settled in quickly. I was on crutches. Moving hurt, breathing hurt, existing, some moments just hurt. I needed help with basic things. Getting food, reaching items, even just adjusting positions so I could sleep. Daniel's version of helping was leaving a sandwich on the counter and saying, "I'm heading out. I've been cooped up all day. It's bad for my mental health." Then he'd leave. And I'd sit there, staring at the door after it closed, trying to understand how someone could walk away so easily from someone who couldn't even stand properly. By the third day, something inside me stopped trying to make excuses. I took out my phone and made a list. Every time Daniel hadn't been there when it mattered. The MBA celebration, my grandfather's funeral, important work moments, and now this. Then I made another list. Every time I had been there for him, and when I looked at them side by side, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt obvious. Like a bruise I'd been pressing on for months, finally deciding to look at it instead of pretending it didn't hurt. That same afternoon, my coworker James stopped by with some documents I needed to sign. He stood awkwardly near the door, shifting his weight like he wasn't sure if he should say something. Finally, he did. "Hey, I don't know if I should tell you this, but people at the office are talking." I already knew what he was going to say before he said it. Daniel's Instagram story? The timestamp. How it lined up almost perfectly with the time I had called him from the hospital. Someone had taken a screenshot before he deleted it, and now it was circulating. The reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Shock. Disgust. People saying they wouldn't treat a stranger like that, let alone someone they lived with. And the worst part? Daniel had no idea. Or if he did, he didn't see anything wrong with it. Because later that night, he casually mentioned, "I think your coworkers don't like me. They were acting weird." Not remorse. Not guilt. Just inconvenience. That was the moment something inside me finally settled. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just firmly. I called David that night. "Can you help me move out this weekend?" I asked. There was no pause. "Yeah," he said, "of course." And just like that, the decision was made. Once the decision settled, everything became quieter. Not easier, not less painful, but clearer. I didn't argue with Daniel. I didn't confront him. I didn't try to explain or give him one last chance to understand what he had done. I just started preparing to leave. There's something strange about that kind of clarity. It doesn't come with anger. It comes with stillness. Like your mind finally stops negotiating with something your heart has known for a long time. I found a small, one-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy. Bare walls, narrow kitchen, the kind of place you take when you need space more than comfort. But when I stood in it for the first time, leaning slightly on my crutches, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Air. I signed a short-term lease that same day. I didn't tell Daniel. At home, I acted normal. I smiled when he spoke. I nodded when he complained about work, about friends, about things that suddenly sounded so distant to me. I conserved my energy, not for the relationship, but for getting out of it. Saturday morning, he left for his usual gym session. That was my window. David showed up first. Then two of our friends, Marcus and Eli. No questions, no hesitation, just quiet efficiency. Boxes, tape, movement. I mostly sat in a chair in the middle of the living room, directing where things should go, feeling a strange mix of embarrassment and gratitude. Embarrassed that I couldn't do more. Grateful that I didn't have to ask twice. At one point, David glanced at me and said softly, "You sure about this?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked around the apartment, the place that had once felt like a shared life, now reduced to objects being sorted into piles. "Yeah," I said finally, "I'm sure." We finished in about 3 hours. 3 hours to pack up 2 years. Before I left, I moved slowly into the kitchen. Every step still hurt, but it felt necessary. like I needed to be fully present for this part. I took a piece of paper and wrote, Daniel, I needed you once, really needed you, and you chose someone else. That tells me everything I need to know about what I mean to you. I hope the party was worth it. Please don't contact me. Luciana. I left it on the counter where he couldn't miss it. Then I walked out. No dramatic goodbye, no final look back, just leaving. At my new place, I turned my phone off. Not because I didn't want to see what he would say, because I already knew. The next morning, I turned it back on. 47 missed calls, 23 messages, all from Daniel. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, and read through them slowly. At first, confusion. Where are you? Why is your stuff gone? Then anger. Are you seriously doing this over one mistake? This is insane, Luciana. Then defensiveness. Hey, you sounded fine on the phone. I didn't think it was that serious. Then excuses. I panicked. I don't handle hospitals well. You know that. Then desperation. Please just call me. We can fix this. And finally, the one that told me everything I needed to know. I can't believe you're abandoning me like this. Abandoning. I stared at that word for a long time. Then I locked my phone and blocked his number. But silence doesn't stop someone who isn't ready to let go. That night, David called me. Hey, Daniel showed up at Cody's place, he said. Apparently, Daniel had gone there looking for me. Told Cody I had disappeared over a small disagreement. Tried to get him to convince me to come back. Cody didn't play along. He told him the truth. Luciana got hit by the car. She called you from the hospital, and you stayed at a party. That's not a small disagreement, not to anyone but you. David said Daniel just stood there for a few seconds, like the words didn't land properly, then muttered something about it being misunderstood and left. By Monday, things escalated. Daniel started reaching out to mutual friends, trying to control the narrative. He said I was overreacting, that I was emotionally manipulative, that I couldn't handle his independence. But there was a problem. People already knew. My coworkers had seen the accident. They had seen the ambulance, the aftermath, and they had seen the screenshot of his post. The timeline didn't lie. The more he tried to twist the story, the more it unraveled. Even Jessica, the same Jessica whose party he chose over me, reached out. Her message surprised me. I didn't know, she wrote. He never told me what happened that night. If I had known, I would have told him to leave immediately. No party is worth that. I read that message twice, then a third time, and something about it settled something inside me, because it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was about a choice, and he had made it. After that, I started hearing things. Friends pulling away from him. Group chats going quiet when he spoke. Plans happening without him. Even at work, things shifted. Our companies overlap. Same clients, same networks. Someone shared a version of the story, no names, in a Slack channel. A what would you do scenario. The response was unanimous. If your partner is in the ER and you stay at a party, something is wrong with you. People connected the dots faster than he expected. Reputation doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes, conversation by conversation, silence by silence. By Wednesday, he found my new address. I saw him through the window before he knocked. For a second, I considered not answering, but I knew avoiding him wouldn't make this disappear. So I opened the door and stayed in the doorway. Didn't invite him in. He looked different, not physically, but something in his expression had shifted. Less confident, less certain. We need to talk, he said. And there's nothing to talk about, I replied. He stepped closer, his voice breaking slightly. Luciana, please. That night, I messed up. I was drunk, I panicked, I didn't understand how serious it was. Why, you hung up on me, I said. I know, he said quickly. I know, and I hate myself for it. I can change, I will change. I studied his face. There were tears. But something about them didn't sit right. Not fake, just misplaced. Like they were there because they were supposed to be. So I asked him something simple. When was the last time you asked how I'm doing? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence. I let it sit there. I have 3 broken ribs, I continued. A fractured leg. I can barely sleep because of the pain. I'll be in physical therapy for months. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And in the 2 weeks since this happened, you haven't asked me once how I feel. Not physically, not emotionally, not anything. His eyes filled again. But this time, I wasn't watching him. I was watching the truth. You taught me something, I said quietly. He looked up. You taught me the difference between someone who loves me and someone who's just comfortable with me being around. The words landed between us. Heavy, final. I stepped back and closed the door. He didn't knock right away. Then softly, a few taps. Then nothing. I stood there longer than I expected, hand still on the door, listening to the silence on the other side. Eventually, his footsteps faded, and just like that, he was gone. The quiet after he left didn't feel empty. It felt earned. That night, David came over with pizza, balancing the box in one hand like nothing in the world was complicated. We sat on my couch. Well, he sat. I shifted carefully until the pain settled into something manageable and watched something mindless on TV. At one point, he glanced over at me and said, "You know, you seem more like yourself." I almost laughed. "Do I?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "like before all of this, before him." I didn't respond right away, because the truth was, I didn't even realize how much of myself I had adjusted until I didn't have to anymore. Physical therapy started the next week. Slow, frustrating progress. Every step a reminder of what happened. Every movement a negotiation with pain. But there was something grounding about it too. Healing wasn't abstract. It was measurable. It showed up in inches, in seconds, in the ability to stand a little longer than the day before. Work was supportive. Messages kept coming in. People checked on me, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely cared. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself receive that. No minimizing, no brushing it off. Just accepting that I mattered. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I stayed. If I had answered his calls. If I had listened to the excuses, accepted the apology, tried to rebuild something that had already shown me its foundation. Would he have changed? Or would I have just taught him that no matter what he did, I would stay? I think I already knew the answer. About a week after that first visit, just when things started to feel steady again, there was a knock on my door. 6 p.m. I knew who it was before I even looked. Daniel stood there, holding a neatly arranged basket, tea, snacks, things someone might bring to a person recovering. A care package. For a second, I considered not opening the door. But I did. He held the basket out slightly, like it might soften the distance between us. "I brought you something," he said. I glanced at it, then back at him. "That's thoughtful," I said evenly. "But I don't need anything." "Luciana, please," he said quietly. "Can we just talk? 5 minutes. 5 minutes." It sounded harmless. It never is. But I stepped aside anyway. He walked in slowly, like he didn't belong there anymore, and he didn't. He sat on the couch. I stayed standing. Partly because sitting still hurt. Mostly because I didn't want this to feel comfortable. "I've been thinking," he started. "A lot. I talked to my therapist. That caught my attention, but I didn't react. She helped me see. I have this pattern," he continued. "I avoid disappointing people. I put others first because it's easier than dealing with conflict. That night, I was afraid if I left Jessica's party, she'd be upset." I let the words settle before responding. "So you were more afraid of Jessica being upset than me being hurt?" I asked. He looked down, then nodded. "When you say it like that, yeah," he admitted. "And that's messed up. I know that now." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, "Do you remember what you said to me on the phone that night?" He swallowed. "You said you got hit by a car," he said slowly, "and I told you to sleep it off or call your mom." The room felt smaller for a second. "I was scared," I said. "I called the person I love because I needed them, and you treated it like I had a headache." His eyes filled again, but this time it was different. Less performance, more weight. "I replay that call every day," he said. "I hate myself for it." I nodded once. "I don't want you to hate yourself," I said, "but I also can't be in a relationship where I come second to everyone else." "You don't," he said quickly. "You're the most important." "Then name one time," I interrupted gently. He stopped. "In the past year, name one time you chose me over someone else when it mattered." Silence. His eyes moved, searching. Nothing came. "I can name a dozen times I chose you," I continued. "Over family, over work, over everything. But I can't think of a single time you did the same for me." His shoulders dropped, and for the first time, he didn't argue. "I can change," he said quietly. "Maybe you can," I replied. I took a breath. "But not with me." He looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means—" I paused, choosing the words carefully. "You need to learn how to prioritize the people you care about. And I can't be the person you practice on while you figure that out." The words didn't come from anger. They came from something steadier. "I deserve someone who already knows that when I call from a hospital, they come," I added. He stared at me, like he was trying to accept something he couldn't negotiate with. "So that's it?" he asked softly. 2 years? And you're just done?" "Yes," I said. No hesitation. No softness around it. Just truth. He sat there for a moment, eyes unfocused, like he was replaying everything in his head all at once. Then he nodded slowly. "You're right," he said, "about all of it." That surprised me. "I do put other people first," he continued, "because it's easier, and I took you for granted, because I thought you'd always be there." He looked up at me. "I'm really sorry, Luciana, for who I was to you." And that was the first apology that felt real. I held his gaze for a second. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "And I meant it." He stood up, hesitated for a moment, then turned toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. "For what it's worth, I hope someday you can forgive me," he said. "Not for me, for you." Then he walked out. This time, he didn't come back. After the door closed, I stood there for a while, letting the silence settle around me again. I was sad. Of course I was. 2 years doesn't disappear just because you understand it. But I wasn't confused anymore, and I wasn't regretful. My ribs were healing. My leg was getting stronger. Physical therapy hurt, but it worked. I had a new project starting at work. David and I were already talking about a weekend trip once I could walk properly again. And slowly, I was rebuilding the parts of my life that had quietly shrunk to make space for someone who never made space for me. I kept coming back to the same thought. If I had stayed, I wouldn't have taught him how to love me. I would have taught him how little love I was willing to accept. And I'm not willing to accept that anymore. Because love, real love, doesn't hesitate when you're in pain. It shows up every time.